Welcome everyone. Today we will be doing a webinar on Google Cloud Platform and specifically how enterprises are using GCP in 2021. So to kick things off today, I want to start by introducing myself. My name is Pam Castricone and I am the data science team lead here at InfoTrust. So in my role, I get to work with some of the largest global brands and companies. And our focus is to help them use their data in more advanced ways. So we often take on customer lifetime value or propensity or other types of modeling and forecasting projects to help companies get predictive insights from their data. Outside of InfoTrust, I am an adjunct at the University of Cincinnati. I teach an elective course on digital analytics for marketing MBA students. I'll also share a little bit about InfoTrust. InfoTrust is an end-to-end digital analytics consulting, data governance, and technology company. There are a number of things that set us apart. One of them is our partnerships. So we are Google Marketing Platform partners, Google Cloud Platform partners, and Looker partners. Another thing that differentiates us is that we don't sell media. We are strictly focused on analytics and the data. And then finally, we have a proprietary software platform called Tag Inspector, which is a data governance platform designed for marketers. I also wanted to give some context before we dive into the content for today's webinar on how we talk to enterprises about analytics maturity and their digital analytics journey. So when we meet with enterprises, we take them through what we call our crawl, walk, run model. So at the most basic side, when an organization is focused on getting their data and setting up those processes, we consider them to be in the crawl phase. But once they move beyond that and are focused on platform integration and reporting and getting insights from the data, we would consider that to be the walk phase. And then when they move beyond that and are focused on predictive capabilities such as forecasting, customer lifetime value, or personalization, we consider that to be the run phase. So the reason I wanted to highlight this today is because we will be talking about Google Cloud Platform. And depending on how organizations use GCP, they could use it to be in either the walk or the run stage of their analytics journey. So if your organization wants to use GCP for integrating data across their different platforms, providing standardized reporting and dashboarding, we consider that to be in the walk stage. Whereas if your organization is using it for machine learning and other predictive capabilities, we consider that to be in the run phase. So GCP can be, part of either the walk or run phase of your analytics journey. Just depends on how you are using it. So let's dive into the main focus of today's session, which is how enterprises are using GCP in 2021. So as a data scientist with InfoTrust, my team and I have the opportunity to work with marketers from some of the largest organizations in the world. And we're fortunate to essentially have a privileged view of how digital analytics and marketing are evolving. And so really the idea behind today's webinar was to share with you some of what we're seeing and specifically how we're seeing enterprises lean in more heavily into using Google Cloud. So there are three things that we're seeing through our work with our partners. And the first one is standardized reporting and dashboarding. So first off, we're seeing that enterprises are getting their data into the cloud. Some are using GCP as a data lake where they're storing large quantities of mostly unstructured data. Others are using GCP as a data warehouse where they're storing highly curated, transformed, structured data. But regardless, cloud migration projects have been ongoing over the past few years, and many organizations are now at the point where they can start to take advantage of all of that effort of getting their data into the cloud. So one of the first things we see them doing is taking on standardized reporting projects. And those projects often revolve around the question of what is the source of truth for data? And so what we mean by that is organizations are really starting to focus on how to curate the different metrics that are used across internal teams. So for example, as a marketer, if you wanted to pool e-commerce revenue, for example, there are multiple different ways you could get that. You could get it out of Google Analytics. You could get it out of your order management system, from your finance team. All of those systems work differently and have different levels of accuracy. And so we would 100% expect that you would get different numbers back, from each of the different systems that you would pull from. And that lack of consistency can cause confusion and friction across internal teams of the organization. So to address that, one of the things we've seen is that our enterprise partners are heavily curating the data that they're providing and reporting. They recognize that each data source has its benefits and limitations. And so they are, putting standards around how to report on data, which then provides consistency in the organization because then everyone, is referencing data that's collected and measured in the same way. With standardized reporting in place, oftentimes the next thing that's needed is a way to make that data accessible, self-service, and interactive. And a great way of doing that is building out dashboards. So benefits of dashboards include that they are, like I said, self-service interactive. They facilitate rapid discovery and ad hoc analysis. And because they are self-service, they're often a natural choice for marketers operating in a fast-moving environment because they can get what they need to make decisions quickly. And then building on this, the third thing we see here is a move toward enterprise-level data visualization tools. And the focus here being how to share data across the entire organization. Tools like Looker, Tableau, Power BI, those are all popular choices because they have the flexibility to accommodate lots of data, have complex data models, and frequently update data. So what we're seeing with our partners is that when they are considering one of these visualization tools, the two biggest factors are the availability of the data and the latency. So essentially, if the tool can't provide the data when it's needed or can't display it quickly enough, then that really hampers or gets in the way of adoption of dashboards within the organization and that widespread information sharing. The next trend we're seeing with enterprises using GCP is diving into machine learning, or ML. So over the past year and a half, Google has continued to expand their machine learning capabilities within Google Cloud. So if your team or organization is new with predictive modeling, we recommend getting started with BigQuery ML or BQML. The reason we recommend that is that the biggest benefit of it is that you can build models directly from BigQuery using SQL. So if you're an analyst or you have analysts on your team, if they can write SQL queries, then they can fit sophisticated models in BigQuery without needing to write a script, stand up a virtual machine, move data around, any of that. They can do that all within BigQuery using SQL syntax. The other benefit of BigQuery ML is that we've seen Google add several new models over the past year and a half that really build out the capabilities. So you can now build recommendation engines, neural networks, propensity models, and do forecasting, all within BigQuery. If your organization is already doing some machine learning and is looking for more customization or an end-to-end solution, AI platform could be a good fit. One of the benefits with AI platform is what they call notebooks. So notebooks are a Jupyter Notebooks service that come pre-installed with many of the most common machine learning frameworks and libraries. So if your team is already comfortable doing their own data transformations, fitting custom models, and then deploying those models into production, AI platform could be a really good fit because it has capabilities across the entire ML workflow. And then finally, one other platform that I like to call out is called CR Mint. And so CR Mint is a Google App Engine application. And basically it provides pipelines to transfer data between BigQuery and Google Analytics. So if you are looking to take on something like custom remarketing audiences, you build your model in BigQuery ML, for example, pairing that with CR Mint help you to push those audiences into Google Analytics so that you can remarket against them in Google Marketing Platform. So that's kind of the final piece that can help make the output of these models more actionable. And then the last thing we're seeing with our enterprise partners is that they are preparing for the transition to Google Analytics 4. Specifically, we're seeing enterprises are dual tagging their websites for both Universal Analytics, which is the current version of analytics that most organizations are using, and GA4, which is the new version. The reason for this is that GA4 is the future of analytics, and it brings about a major shift in the way that analytics data is collected. Metrics and reporting will change, and any queries that your team has currently written to do advanced analysis will need to be rewritten to work with the new data model under GA4. So the reason that we're talking about dual tagging now is that by getting that in place, we'll give teams time to get used to the new metrics and reports and get familiar with what will change to ease that transition to the new data model that will be the future of analytics going forward. So now that we've covered those three key things that our teams are seeing regarding GCP, let's talk about some next steps that you can take to get started. The first one is, if you haven't already, go ahead and set up the integration between Google Analytics 360 and Google Cloud Platform. With GA360, you get an out-of-the-box integration between the two. And the real benefit of that is that when you export your analytics data to BigQuery, you get access to your complete hit level data set collected by analytics. And so that really opens the door for advanced analysis and modeling. If you wanted to build a propensity model to remarket to customers, the way that you would typically get started with that is by querying the data that comes from the integration with GA360. So that's often an important starting point for machine learning as well as standardized reporting. Beyond that, if you need dashboards, there are a number of dashboarding solutions out there. Data Studio is a free option, but if you're at a large organization, Looker is the enterprise level dashboarding solution from Google. And since they acquired Looker, they've done a lot to build out the data modeling capabilities in it, and integrate it into other Google products. So feel free to check out Looker. If you're ready to get into machine learning or do more with ML, BigQuery ML or AI platform are great places to start, as well as CR Mint, that Google App Engine application that helps make advanced modeling accessible and actionable to marketers. And then finally, with the shift to the new GA4 data model, this is a great time to start moving toward dual tagging your sites to make that migration and transition down the road easier and smoother. So that wraps up the 3 ways that we are seeing enterprises using Google Cloud Platform in 2021. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. All right, we have a question. How is Data Studio compared to Looker? So Data Studio and Looker are both data visualization platforms, both provided by Google. Data Studio is a free tool, and it's been around for a few years now. They have built out quite a bit of functionality to Data Studio in terms of connectors to data sources, um, like some data manipulation that you can do, different visualization types. So there definitely are a lot of features there, but I would say the one key difference probably for the audience on this call is that I would not consider Data Studio to be an enterprise level solution. It can be slow, especially if it's handling large quantities of data. So if you are working for a large organization that needs to share, that has lots of data, needs frequent updates, and needs to share that broadly, one of those enterprise level tools like Looker, Tableau, Power BI are generally a better fit. If you're working on a smaller scale, Data Studio is often a great platform to get started with. All right, feel free to drop in any other questions. Okay, we have another question. Why should teams consider using a tool like BigQuery ML? How is this better than the reports in GA or other tools? Great question. So BigQuery ML there is a little bit of overlap with some of the predictive metrics that exist in Google Analytics, in Universal Analytics, and GA4. So for example, there's a metric in both Universal Analytics and GA4 called conversion probability. And the use case there is remarketing. So, there would seem to be some sort of propensity model running in the background to give a score of how likely a user would be to come back and convert. So there is some overlap there. However, BigQuery ML has far more capabilities than are built into Google Analytics out of the box. So like I had mentioned, BigQuery ML supports matrix factorization models, which are used for building recommendation engines, time series models, which are used for forecasting. It supports neural networks, in a clustering algorithm, so if you want to build segmentations, in addition to classification and regression models. So BigQuery ML definitely has far more capabilities than what's available in GA. And again, I think the real benefit to BigQuery ML is that you can build those models by writing, an SQL statement that I believe really lowers the barrier to entry for a lot of teams and makes modeling much more accessible. All right, a couple other questions. Is the GA4 and BigQuery integration enough to get started? So depends on what you want to get started with, but that is generally a good place to start with all of the 3 use cases that we talked through today. So when it comes to standardized reporting, there are the reporting APIs through Google Analytics, so you wouldn't necessarily need to get the integration set up, but then there are limitations with using the APIs, so we generally recommend the BigQuery integration for reporting purposes. With machine learning, absolutely, a lot of times the data that you want to use to build a model is, when you would need the complete unsampled data set. So the GA4 integration with BigQuery is generally a prerequisite for machine learning. And then also maybe not 100% mandatory for preparing for the transition to GA4, but like I said, if you have any reports, dashboards that are built off of queries of UA data right now, then yes, I would definitely recommend connect your GA4 data to BigQuery and start working on migrating those reports over, because the data model is changing in a fundamental way. There will be differences, and it's something we're all going to need to work through and adapt to this new standard for analytics. Couple other questions. Do you have examples of using CR-Mint for audience strategies? The top of mind example for me is a workshop that my team had done about a month ago with an organization, and basically they, in a very short period of time, were able to use BigQuery ML to run a propensity model and identify customers that were close to conversion. And then they took the output of that model and used CR-Mint for the data as a data pipeline to push that data back into Google Analytics. And then they built their audiences off of that data, and were able to retarget them in GMP. So that's probably about as detailed as I can get in that particular use case. But I think the key takeaways there are they built a remarketing audience using Google Analytics data. They built a propensity model to support that audience, and they use BigQuery ML and CR-Mint as the way to automate getting that data into GMP. Another question here, is it recommended that after the dual setup in between Google Analytics 4 and Universal Analytics, that we work with the data in BigQuery of GA4, or just use that property to reduce the learning curve and work with the GA universal data in BigQuery? So that's a tough one. I don't know if I personally have a strong point of view on that one yet. I do think there's definitely a benefit for reducing the learning curve. I think, yeah, I would say reducing the learning curve and doing any work that you need to migrate your reporting over. So, as part of, I see that transition happening on two fronts. Getting used to the new reports in GA4 because they are a little bit different than what you may be used to in Universal Analytics right now, in the way that metrics are calculated. And then I would say, kind of in parallel to that, any analysis you're doing off of your GA data in BigQuery, I think we'll need to go through a similar period of transition. That'll be a more manual process. You'll need to rewrite your queries to do that. So I would say I see those two things happening hand in hand, and we're recommending standing them up in parallel so that you can get familiar with how they're different and really adjust to how you'll be needing to use the new reports to still deliver against your objectives and kind of how you use the data in your current role. All right, I believe we have time for one more question, and that is recommendations or resources to advocate my organization's leadership to invest in enterprise level tools. That is a great question. I think as a follow-up, we can provide some of our resources. I'm not sure if we have anything on that topic specifically, but I know we have a number of articles that we've written about the value of some of the enterprise level tools. So I believe we might be able to provide some articles that will help with advocating the need for enterprise level tools. So great question there as well. So Thank you all very much. Really enjoyed speaking with you today. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We're always happy to help. All right. Thank you very much. Have a great day.